Vikings were very diverse and not all white, according to a new guide to teach young school children. What else is new? We was Vikings round 2, as last week we talked a lot about how woke is receding, how it is going away, and how it is losing a lot, if indeed not the vast majority, of its cultural influence. But it is, of course, also important to remember that what was initially conquered, the institutions, the HGOs, etc., these things will be around for a very long time still. The special interest groups like SAG-AFTRA, for example, or various teaching organizations who have a vested interest in continuing to push their politics will continue to do so for a very long time still. The only real difference is that hopefully normal people will start pushing back on this in the same way that we've been pushing back in entertainment. As we have here from the Telegraph, Vikings were not all white, pupils to be told. Tutors placed in schools by the Brilliant Club, an educational charity, activist organization by any other name, have been urged to ditch Eurocentric ideas in favor of a decolonized narrative that moves subjects away from a Western focus. This is nothing new either, by the way. The decolonization idea in British entertainment has been going on since, I think we first heard about this like 5 years ago, as there's been a consistent push, not just in entertainment, which is what we usually concern ourselves with, but in the school system, and particularly in higher education, to introduce a decolonized narrative. What does that mean? Well, it literally means anti-Western. That's what it means. It is to shift the focus on Western history and over to anything else, even if they've gotta A, make shit the fuck up to do so, or B, tortuously introduce alternative forms of history. So that in a English history class, you won't be taught about English history, you will be taught about African history, you'll be taught about slavery, or Islam, or anything else, or if you have to touch on British history, you will simply need to decolonialize it by, for example, saying, oh, you know the Vikings? Those people from Scandinavia? Well, there was a lot of blacks and Muslims amongst them, you see. As that is literally what's going on here. A guide produced by the charity suggests ditching the idea that Vikings were a homogeneous community of blonde Scandinavians. Instead, tutors are told to consider teachings that Vikings were not all white. The guide intends to make lessons more relatable for pupils. That too is indicative of how far England has fallen when it is considered to be more inclusive to teach British school children that the Vikings weren't white. As, of course, at this point, London is majority non-English, and the rest of the nation is swiftly going to follow suit. And that Vikings were a very diverse group of people with diverse religious beliefs, and urges the tutors to consider that some Vikings became practicing Muslims. So, if they were actually teaching about the Vikings rather than the fantasy Blackwings, they would know that the Vikings, they basically viewed religion as a self-evident thing. Their gods were real. Their gods were alive. They existed. Odin, Thor, all of these were actual entities that were real and existing in the real world. And they had temples, sure, but they were fairly rare, as the gods weren't really interested in the worship of like Christian churches and so on. And so when a Christian king, for example, said, okay, we'll make a deal. I'll give you 700 pounds of silver, but you've got to stop raiding us and you've got to become Christian. The Viking just went like, okay, how are you going to make me a Christian? Well, we're going to dip you in water real quick. The Vikings viewed that as an expediency. You'll give me money if you get to dip my head in water for a bit. I'll take it. Same with the Muslims as well. If they could get better trade deals with Muslims by going, what's the phrase again? Your salami. Then that is what the Vikings would do. The last large-scale study of Viking DNA conducted at the University of Cambridge in 2020 suggested that diversity in Scandinavian genetics came from other parts of Europe and what is now Russia. So this is the article basically just stating the obvious. Were the Vikings truly diverse? No. They were Danes, Norwegians, Swedes, Russians, maybe some Estonians and Lithuanians in there. That's about as diverse it has got. And yet, the Brilliant Club runs a scholarship program that places PhD students in more than 800 schools to tutor underprivileged pupils and help them to get to university. So, this is the perfect example of there are some ideas that are so stupid you have to go to higher education to get them. You need a university degree to think that the Vikings were black. Black Muslims, in fact. And these people are now going to schools and basically utilizing their standard. Going like, listen, I have a PhD in PhD. What even? I have a PhD in diversity, okay? You're gonna have to listen to me because I'm the expert. I have my appeal to authority right here. So shut up and believe that the Vikings were black. It has created 2 Decolonizing Your Course toolkits to help tutors with the courses they will deliver when working with schools. The guides present them with a preferred decolonized approach narrative, which is contrast with a Eurocentric and colonized version of history. So, a actual true version of European history and a made-up bullshit version, which is yet again, for the umpteenth effing time, designed specifically to deconstruct the culture of Western nations, as they even go on here. Anglo-Saxons. You shouldn't use the term Anglo-Saxon, because, you see, it's not a real term. The people back then didn't call themselves Anglo-Saxons, okay? And besides, they were very diverse. You can't just... It's an upper-class white man thing. You can't use that. And again, as always with this, it's based in an element of truth. Did the, 500s after death, people in England call themselves Anglo-Saxons? No, they usually call them, Ingles, or something like that. It basically sounds like English, which is where the word English come from. Anglo-Saxon was then invented as a term used to describe the original Germanic settlers of the British Isles. Before that again, but we use the term now as a academically correct term for the group of people settled in the English Isles at the time. But well, you see, it was used by white supremacists, you see. We gotta use decolonization to fix this, because there's far too many Was it? I think they mentioned it. Oh yeah, there we go. By academic concern, the latter Anglo-Saxon has become a phrase surrounding white identity used by racists, principally to describe those in the US descended from white early settlers. I don't know if the Americans use the phrase Anglo-Saxons over much, but again, of course, that is true. I don't care if white nationalists use it, assuming they even do, because it is the correct term. Like we refer to the Normans as the Normans. The Normans are Norse descendant settlers who mixed with the Frankish settlers on the area we refer to as Normandy, that they then invaded Britain and replaced what was the old Anglo-Saxon culture with the more Norman-based culture, as the Vikings finally did conquer England in the end, even if they had to shag a few French women to get themselves the manpower to do so. And again, none of this has anything to do with history. None of this has anything to do with education. All of this is purely political. 1000% purely political. It is to go into schools to people who literally don't know any better and could never know any better and go, no. Reality as you know it doesn't exist. We are going to turn everything upside down because that is our doctrine. We want you to believe that the sky is red. Literally, with like, oh, it's 20 degrees outside, heat wave, be scared, be afraid, etc. We want you to believe that the Vikings were black, and we want you to believe that the history of England doesn't exist because we have come up with a preferred narrative that minimalizes your history and your people's role in all of this. It is quite literally, and absolutely so, a way of brainwashing the English populace into becoming subservient serfs in their own nation by taking away their history, by exalting the history of the out-group, by claiming that everyone else was Muslim, everyone else was diverse, everyone else was brown, only you are lagging behind, and God willing, this will now finally have been mocked so thoroughly in every other field of entertainment, in every other field of social discourse, that even the schools will look at this and go, you're fucking insane. Get the hell out. I don't care if you have a PhD. I don't care if you're some from charitable program. You are bringing propaganda to the school. You should leave now. The very fact that this is even legal is absurd, but hey, it's England. The country that de facto legalized molestation for a while there, so hey. Hopefully, though, this is something that the English will begin reacting quite aggressively towards, as whilst we do see, again, the receding of the power of wokeism in entertainment, and culture is downstream from that as politics is downstream from culture, we will begin seeing a major pushback against this shit, because even middle school English teachers must surely know that no, the Vikings were black is fucking dumb. At least so I hope. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.